like Dave just said, now it's allergies. Huh? No.
I like option 2. Yeah. I'm not sure, but this is plan 1. Plan 2 is the one I like. If you notice over here, it has a different tone over here.
Oh.
Shows
It's right here.
compared to this one. See,
Yeah.
Isn't that awful? We thought we got the wrong laser for a second. It does point. It's extremely bright. Okay.
Is it still on the talking stage or?
no,
Okay.
You ready? Mic's on.
Gardner? Michael? Kate's not on.
We'll call the East Manchester Township Board of Supervisors April 8th meeting to order with the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, is there a motion to amend or accept the agenda as presented?
Make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, Dina, you gonna second that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Prior to tonight's meeting, we were in executive session for personnel and litigation matters. Okay, we have the minutes for the March 11th Board of Supervisors meeting. Is there anyone wish to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second the motion. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. That takes us down to public comments. Anyone wish to make a public comment at this time? If you would, come up to the microphone stand, make sure that you push the little button and have at it.
There you go.
Push-
Okay, well, I'm Susanna Eisenhower, 400 York Street. I was here last month at the meeting to bring up my problem with the tractor trailer traffic and damaging my property. Needless to say, it is no better. If at anything, it is worse. I paid to have big boulders brought in, I paid to have everything filled with topsoil, and it's amazing. I wish I could show you the videos. I have cameras outside. They have now ran over and dragged those boulders halfway up the front of my property. My mailbox will be taken down next. The front of my yard now has big ruts in it. I mean, this one boulder stands this high. They just, at one point they were in my driveway, so we had to go through the yard to access our driveway to get to the garage. Every day I'm out there scraping the mud and chunks and blacktop and everything out of the driveway. Shane has been very helpful in staying on top of it, but I understand your hands are tied. Today, Gary Ishman did come out this morning. He actually called me as I was leaving. Gary Ishman is a bigwig at PennDOT. I know Gary. My son went to school with his kids and played football. He didn't know it was me. I gave his wife a heads up last night that it was me. And he's putting signs up. He told me what you did. The signs are ordered. And he said when it's all said and done, there will be no turning at this intersection at all. Good luck with that, because they don't follow the signs that are up now. As I was talking to Gary, several trucks came down York Street, which they're not supposed to, sat at that four-way stop sign and made a left-hand turn with 4 signs staring them right in the face saying no left-hand turns. So, I mean, Gary said unless it's enforced, that's all they can do, is put signs up. So, I don't know what can be done, but something has to be done. I mean, I'm to the point where I'm gonna buy rebarb and line that whole corner of my property and sharpen the ends of it sticking out of the ground this far. Because I'll be damned if they're gonna run over my property, they're gonna get flat tires. Because it's not right. I take pride in my property, I pay my taxes, and I can't sit aside and let this continue to go on, I can't. So I don't know what can be done, if anything. I said to Gary, he pointed out the wall across the street. He said he put that in 20 years ago. I said, how about putting one of them in here? You know? He said, well, let's start with the signs. It's not gonna work. I mean, you know, unless they enforce it, I can't see it working because there's signs everywhere now. I didn't mention to Gary, because you said, Shane, that they were gonna put more signs up at
Willow Spring.
Willow Springs.
Yes.
I didn't mention that to Gary. He didn't bring it up, so I don't know if that's still in the works or,
Yes, that all comes with your intersection also. It will be posted supposedly both sides at Bayshore School Road, which is right there at Willow Springs, with oversized signs, trying to get their attention for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like Gary said, he has a pretty good sign detail from what he's telling me, the traffic engineer.
okay,
Try it and let's see what
right.
happens. Yeah.
I mean, when you and I talked the other day, you know, to say that when the trucks are coming down there and approaching Willow Springs, and if they hit a green light, they're going 40 miles an hour, which it's a 40-mile speed limit,
It is, yeah.
you know, and they're not even seeing the signs. Well, if I disobey a speed limit sign, I'm getting a ticket. So, you know, I know maybe we only have 2 police cars, but, you know, it's, as a resident who pays her taxes and takes care of her property, this is very upsetting. And it's just, I have forced myself to stay out from outside because in the past 3 weeks, I was like a crazy woman out there. I mean, yelling at the trucks, directing them to go the other way. Other neighbors across and beside me were out. I had WGAL News out. They're actually wanting to meet with PennDOT. She's coming out Monday. They already came out and did pictures and took a video. As they were doing a video, trucks were disobeying the law, making all kinds of wrong turns. I had one resident stop and she was yelling at them. I mean, I haven't had one resident go by that wasn't on my side, not one. School bus drivers, everything. Nobody, everybody stops when I'm out there and they're totally on my side. But like I said, the truck drivers call me crazy, like I'm the one at fault. I'm not at fault. I live here. I pay my taxes. I want my property to be nice. You guys can't keep doing this. It's just bullshit. I can't stand it. I mean, I apologize for cursing, but I am upset. So that's where I stand.
Thank you for your comments. You
Thank
did make a comment that we only have 2 police cars. What do you mean by that?
I don't know. I think that was brought up sometime that, I think last time we were here, that somebody was saying how the regionals have so many and, you know, we just don't have the forces. And Shane said that they asked permission to park a cruiser in my driveway. I told them they can park there 24/7. I'll feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner because I want this taken care of. Swear me in. I'll sit there every evening and every weekend. And I mean, I got a pretty good picture of that one today. I got his DOT number and his license plate. You told me if I did that, give it to you and send him a ticket.
You got a call.
I mean, if I have to sit out there every day and do this, I will, because they just don't care.
If I may, Shane, do you have a text or an email or anything stating that she gave permission to the police?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I did talk to Deputy Chief Rizzo, and I commended him for having Officer George out there. I understand he's very active in the area.
Right,
He's
he-
only one officer. We need more officers. We did Shane and I did a drive around with Joe Diorsi, our state rep.
Yes, he told me that.
We sat there and watched what was going on. He's aware of it. Let me read into the record what the staff has created a statement that we're going to give to the press, and I wanted to read that into the record. Approximately a month ago, the Township Public Works Director had contacted PennDOT regarding the intersection where tractor trailers disregard the existing signage. The trailers have done damage to public and private property, as well as create safety issues for the motoring public. There have been numerous close call vehicle accidents due to tractor trailer traffic. Signs View Road, Musser Street, York Street, Ward Road are all state roads. Upon our request, PennDOT's traffic engineer has completed a plan for this area and is currently awaiting the creation of the new signs. The most recent update is that they should soon be completed and then soon get erected. Additionally, the Township Public Works Director has been interacting with the York County Regional Police Department since day one for enforcement. Otherwise, the township has been very accommodating to the affected residents by installing barrels on one resident's property, which have been removed due to being destroyed, placing a no right turn sign on Zines View Road, and in the meantime, and being a listening ear daily as the township is very understanding to the affected residents of the area. East Manchester Township thanks the police, or the public, I'm sorry, thanks the public for their patience and understanding during this time. And that will be sent to news media. Officer George has been writing them up. He's throwing the book at him, so to speak, trespassing and everything else. And but it has to stop. I got complaints from citizens this weekend, not particularly about tractor trailers, but people just basically running that intersection stop signs.
Yeah.
One individual almost got hit by a pickup, and then later on in the weekend, he was sitting eastbound on board, and they were going to turn left to go down, towards Gross's farm. And tractor trailer was coming, and he didn't seem like he was slowing down, so he did not pull out, and the tractor trailer went right across the intersection to Thornton's.
Yep, I've seen that
And,
happen.
So we discussed this situation, and we're going to try the signage. We all know how that's going to work. So we have some ideas that we can work with PennDOT for after when that does not work, if it
Okay.
doesn't work. Hope it does.
I hope it does too. I mean, and like I said, told WGL, Shane, you've been helping 110%. And it's, I appreciate everything that you're doing. Gary, actually, his crew was on Zines View Road as we were in the driveway talking. And they were there checking out, I guess, the sign where they're gonna add the signage to it. And as he drove by us, Gary called him and said, hey, as soon as those come in, I want them up ASAP, and he said they will be, so, I have my fingers crossed, but they're not paying attention now, and they don't give a shit, so. I was wondering if it'd help if I went down to that DHL and went in and said, look, you need to warn these truck drivers. I'm the one that they're damaging the property, and I'm enforcing it, and the township is, and they're gonna start getting ticketed. I don't know if that'll help at all, if the word would get out.
Well, I might have one more suggestion, Mr. Chairman. I thought about this the other day. It reminded me, she just said DHL. I tried to follow a few. They're not all going to DHL.
Oh, I'm sure they're not.
I'd like to, well, first, Suzanne, is it the busiest in the morning out there? That's what it seems like to me.
It is. It's kind of sporadic. Like on the weekends, it kind of dies off.
Correct.
Like
yes.
this evening, since I've been home at 4 o'clock, I probably could have wrote 10 tickets while I was out there till I came here.
Well, I see it in the morning at 7:30.
Yeah.
If I'm going by, that seems like
It seems like it picks up in the middle of the night, like 3, 4 in the morning. It really picks up, yeah.
And then until daylight.
And then it kind of dies down because you said to me, I was thinking about putting them ballards in, which I think I'm still gonna. I can pick them up for used. The guy I got the boulders from has them for $25 a piece. They're ugly and rusty looking, but I don't care. And I think if it dies down over the weekend, if I get that quick set cement, I might get lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, if I put 4 or 5 of them there and get my boulders back over there, it's gonna be a little harder.
The truck will still knock them.
Really?
They will knock them clean out. I
Yeah,
mean, unless you're putting them things in there
well, I've had
6
to,
feet or more, I mean,
really?
they are going to, yes. Yeah, it takes a lot to stop a tractor trailer.
Well, that's not encouraging.
Yeah, sorry, I'm
I
sorry,
mean,
but
it
I
is.
hate to see you waste your time and effort, you know what I mean?
It's just
So,
like, and they're gonna put another, I mean, I know you said they're gonna put that other trucking company in, you have that all figured out, they're gonna do that access road, and
that's what we're shooting for. We can
But,
plan this.
you
one
know,
better, yes.
what's gonna stop them from not taking the access road and going, well, this is a shorter route, I just wanna go up here and go straight across and, or whatever, make a left or make a right or,
Well, let me,
It's amazing how many trucks recently I've seen coming out of the road across from York Street,
yes,
right across the intersection there. Like yesterday, I saw 4 big, massive dump trucks in a row. They couldn't even make the turn. The
Coming
cars
out
had to
York
back
Street,
up.
yeah.
I was like, how did they even get in there? What are they doing?
Well,
I mean,
unless
that
they're
street's
working-
lined with trees and everything.
unless they're working somewhere locally there, I don't
Yeah.
know, but I didn't see them.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But
It's-
I'd like to, if I could stage a couple of my guys down at the Bartlett that doesn't exist, I'd like to just see where they're going. If 90% are coming from Morgan Logistics, I have good contacts with the trucking company there and things. Maybe we can head this off and they can let these drivers know they need to go down and go out Expresso, you know what I mean, and not coming up that way. So that's the only other option I have right now.
We're hoping that if and when some of the land gets developed back that way, we can have a transportation plan that prohibits trucking from going in Science View Road to the borough. So that will eliminate them coming into your intersection.
Right, right.
There's lots of ideas that we have that we could employ, but we have to be in concert with the state, of course, because it's their road.
Right.
But we will be working on trying to mitigate that and stop trucks from, I don't want trucks going into the borough from industrial area. if we can help it. So with that said, we'll wait and see what the signs look like and
What it
we'll
does.
go from there.
Okay.
But we do feel your pain.
I appreciate it, and I don't mean to sound, like I'm a complainer, but I guess I am.
No, you have a right to.
I just want,
Because what they're, one question I want to ask Jane, do you know the right of way there at that intersection? How much state
No.
right of way is there?
No, not from PennDOT.
Because I'm going to caution her for what she puts in alongside the road. Because you
She's
could-
been cautioned.
All right.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's, that was brought to my attention, not by you, but I discussed it at work and stuff, and they said, you may want to have that surveyed and see where the right-of-way is, because
Yeah.
somebody at work's having similar problems, not with tractor trailers, but, he said even though you mow it and take care of it, his property is 5 feet into the right-of-way,
Yeah, and Mr. Ishman brought it to my attention, all the PennDOT guys did.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm like, still, okay, then do something so they're not cutting across my driveway and my yard. I can't believe my concrete driveway isn't broke up yet.
You have-
I think
you
because
have a
of,
well-built driveway.
Yes,
I
That's all
think
got to
because of
say.
all the mud and thickness that they drag across there, but I was joking with my neighbor Curtis the other day, and he came out and I said, my boulders are gonna be in your yard soon. Well, I literally was joking, but, they're getting close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they are.
And it's not like I can't just go move them, so thankfully the one is that they drug up there is not out in the road. It's, it's about a foot or 2 from the line, but, I'm not gonna bother moving them because they're just gonna drag them right back right now. So,
Guaranteed, yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm just gonna wait and see
Yeah,
what
hopefully
happens.
PennDOT gets on it, you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
heard Gary, hopefully these signs are done and ready,
Right,
and these guys can get this done, so.
okay. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
My comments are, one, contact the York County PIO. We fax that into them. He can hit one button and send it out to all the news media.
Oh.
And secondly, put it on our website.
Yep.
I can't think of what his name is. Howard, you remember? He used to be a reporter, Muscle Bound. Mike Fisher might know who it is. But yeah, that way, if you just send it to them, they'll fax it out there.
The ones who actually asked for it was WGAL, so I had already sent it to WGAL. But you guys do want it to go out everywhere then?
Might as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And put it on our web.
Yep.
Mr. Grothaus.
Since you're on the topic of trucks, trucks coming up and down Canal Road Extended has not gotten any better. It's gotten worse itself also. And living right down there, the intersection of Canal and Locust Point, I've seen a lot of trucks not stopping at the red light. Today I was coming east on Canal Road, turning on the Locust Point, and I had the green light. Nobody was coming down the hill towards me, so I started to turn, and I was scared to death because some truck didn't even slow down coming around that corner from Locust Point on the Canal Road. He just flew right around that without stopping or even slowing down. Being it's red light and, you should stop and then turn right. I've seen that going the other way quite a few times too, but it's not getting any better. And also, the bar that comes out of UNFI there that was supposed to keep trucks from turning to the right, that's gone.
Yeah.
That's been snapped off for a while.
We took Mr. Diorsi up there. As for the Locust Point intersection there, Shane, you and I talked, I want to request that PennDOT investigate whether adjusting that stop bar, bringing that stop bar back
Yeah.
further.
I'm already looking into that. If PennDOT will have to grant our wishes, basically. But yes, we are looking into that left turn lane coming out of Locust Point.
Yeah, and going towards Thornton, bringing that stop bar back so that my wife is scared to death when those tractor trailers make her back up in her little car so they can, and so it needs adjusted, and I think we should get that accomplished.
A lot of those
That's not
trucks,
preventing them from running
a lot of those trucks use that full intersection when they're turning there.
Yeah.
They come over into the turning lanes and everything else. And also, I know it's not East Manchester Townships, but Locust Point, they're still going up and down there from 83 from Strinestown.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of them getting stopped up there, but there's still a lot getting through.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay. Chief Stevens, you are up.
Good evening. Daryl, to answer your question, Ted Check. I think he fell asleep.
What's his name?
I thought, John.
What is it?
Ted Check.
Oh,
Yes.
I have
Yeah.
Greg Monsky or something. That's who just popped up on the internet.
I don't know who that is.
Greg Monsky. It looks like he's the director, and that's who his email contact is on the website.
Ted Check.
Yep.
You're welcome. I don't really have anything else to add to my report. Want to thank Christy for helping us out with getting the burn ban in effect, and that did expire on Sunday. So that was advertised Monday morning, first thing, and taken down. So, although we could use a lot more rain,
Yes, we could.
about 4 inches, I'm told. So that's neither here nor there.
And
I'd be happy to answer any
your
questions you might
report,
have.
your report's very good. The tax credit rebate sheets are looking good. As long as Christie can understand them, they're looking good.
Is that what we're moving on to then?
I guess we can. Let me ask,
Yeah,
any
yeah.
questions for Joe
No.
about the fair report? Thank you.
Okay. So this, I just want to start off by saying, next year, we will only have one deadline date, which is going to be March 1st for these applications for the volunteer service tax refund. And, but this year, we had March 1st and then April 1st. This is the last batch out of 17 total volunteer firefighters that qualified, only 12 applied for this refund. And so in this batch, we have a total amount of $1,188.62 for the real estate local tax as a refund. And myself, Kathy Emsweiler, and Jen, our accountant, we all reviewed these, made sure that everything was checking out right and all the numbers match up. And all of the guys presented on your Excel sheet there definitely qualified. So we recommend this to be approved.
With that said, I'll make a motion, we approve the volunteer services tax refunds for the township real estate in the amount of $1,188.62.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? The only discussion I have, Christie, is next year, the drop dead date is March 1st. What is our plans for when someone comes in on March 3rd or April 1st? What's the recourse for them? They just lost it.
They lost it.
Okay.
And that follows suits with York County. You cannot miss that deadline. To be fair across the board, it's just like taxes. When Kathy's collecting, if you miss your face period, you go right into penalty, and you have to do that to be fair.
Okay, and speaking of fair, we're gonna give both fire departments ample warning.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, and that's what I did this year as well.
Okay.
Yep. There was tons of emails I sent out, and I have it on 2 areas of our website, and pretty simple, explained, broken down sheets, everything, so.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep, you're welcome. And then
Any other discussion?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna add that the total that was refunded officially for the tax year of 2024 now, after this was said and done, was $1,890.37 for the real estate local.
Okay.
So that does not include the other benefit for the EIT, the earned income tax local, okay?
Okay, with that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. That takes us to York County Regional Police Department. I have a report that I created here. This Thursday, April 10th, the police meeting is at the Northeastern Precinct on Board Road. So if you feel so inclined, you can join us there. The merger is on date to be June 1st is a projected operational date where everything will be transitioned over. What I mean by transitioned over, uniforms, patches are underway. Vehicle lettering is scheduled for the first week of May. All the new firearms for the officers that didn't have the proper firearms have arrived, and the officers have been scheduled for qualifications with those firearms. Cameras, both in-car and body-worn cameras. Of course, they have reached their end of life, and the police department has worked with Motorola to create a 5-year plan to stretch the cost out across a 5-year plan, so it doesn't hit our municipalities all at one time. The cost of these cameras are $120,000, and that's CoStar's price. And lo and behold, portable radios, Motorola, they reached the end of their serviceable life as well, so the county's gonna be ordering all new radios for everyone. And our quote alone for the radios to replace the ones we have is $297,000. And we are applying for a grant to help offset the financial impact to our department with that. Personnel, we currently have 2 cadets in the police academy, and they're scheduled for June graduation. And immediately we would put 2 more in the next class, which starts in July. So that's 4 cadets that we'll have coming out, and we are on track, York County Regional, to hire 5 additional officers in 25 and 26. And that accounts for retirements, additional SROs. Since we're merging with Spring Garden, York Suburban requires an SRO, so we're going to supply that. I think Downstown is going to get the second one. Things are moving in the police department. It's really amazing to see everything move in all its different places and stuff. It's Chief Damon and Chief Rizzo do a great job. So
If I can make a clarification, when you said proper firearms, that you're just standardizing what Spring Garden carried, a different type of firearm from your county regional people, so they need to throw ammo to each, clips to each other or something, they all have the same firearm.
So we're talking caliber.
It might have been make and model, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
6-hour tube.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking. All right. Any questions on any of that? Northeastern York County Emergency Management Agency, any reports from that, Christie, or anything?
Mike did report, he was unable to attend tonight. He was going to because he's trying to meet his quarterly attendance. That's his goal, to attend, board meetings, but, he was scheduled for work tonight. But otherwise, he just continues to make progress, and, he recently inquired to, my office regarding, contracts for like if an emergency occurred, you know, like, this- I don't know, like digging dirt or moving dirt or something like from Gingrich, for instance. That's just an example. You know, during an event, if we needed their services or if the agency needed the services, then we would already have a contract in place. And he was asking who can sign those. And we did obtain that answer, which is he would need a motion from the committee and motions from each board, so us and the boroughs to approve the contracts.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
A case in point was when we had the truck incident back there at 83 underpass. And all that, Gingrich came out and put soil on the road, graded it, brushed it, and took care of the spillage there. So I think Mike's going to have them on tap where we can just call them up and they're there.
He's also been vetting different services for, like, if a resident needed to hire a service, then he's having interviews with these different services that are reaching out to municipalities for, you know, disasters, and so that he's able to recommend. I mean, a resident can go with whoever they'd like, but at least he vetted them for what they do and qualified for and such, you know,
So,
and have a list, a recommendation list.
so he's getting EMA's endorsement there, those companies, okay.
Right.
Also, he's making inroads into purchasing, they purchased one Dell laptop and a Chromebook. They're on schedule to do a replacement plan of the really old little laptops they have next 5 to 6 years. We're taking it slow so we can stretch the cost out. He has been asked by York County Emergency Management to host a webinar and a tabletop exercise sometime in the fall. I promised the school that we would do a tabletop exercise for an incident down at the 3 elementaries that are clustered down there, where if something happens down in there, we got to know how we're getting students out, that sort of thing. So I think a tabletop is in order for down there. And Mike agrees. So that's it for EMA. Any questions? Okay, moves us into special request. Rolling Meadows wants to have a block party. And they made a request. They're asking for roads to be closed. Christie, I'll let you take it from there.
Sure. So on Saturday, May 24th, 2025, between the hours of 3 p.m. and 10 p.m., at the location of Hollyhock Drive between Rensselaer and Wagon Way, they plan or would like to have another block party. They did this last year. It was very successful. They had fire truck there. The kids had a great time. So it was very good for their community. And I believe last year, with the board's approval of this, you recommended that there's some way for emergency services to be able to get in and out easily from that section in the event of an emergency. And we just had them work with Chief Stevens and the police department to accomplish that. I believe they also borrowed some barricades from us. Is that correct, Shane? So they are requesting to do this again.
So you were reaching out for a motion?
I am.
Okay,
Thank you.
I couldn't really tell. Does anyone wish to make a motion to?
Question before I motion.
Okay.
There's a signature page, there's only one address that did sign. Was that the one that's leased home or taken over type of deal?
I think he's the pilot that's away a
I
lot.
think it's the way it read, the ones overseas or something like that.
Yep.
Okay, so it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everyone signed off.
Nobody complained at all last year. We had nothing on the
Okay.
record.
That was my only question, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
I'll make a motion to approve the request to have a block party in this development.
Very good.
I'll second it.
Which discussion, which one of you guys are gonna go speak? You know, let's stand a soapbox.
That's the chairman's job.
Yeah, that's why you
I
get
think we
big
should
bucks.
send Shane down there to recruit snowplow drivers.
Yes, yes, okay.
Hitch up a plow a truck and take one down there.
Sure. Some codes out, see if they can go. I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. That takes us down to correspondence. Springersbury is doing their comprehensive plan update. Very comprehensive. It took a lot of, killed a lot of trees. Does any of the board members have any questions? I see the York Gallery and
How
Mall.
long's it been since when was, I guess, the plan before this? Just out of curiosity, I don't know, because I read through it and I didn't see it referenced.
I didn't see that either. I'm not sure.
And the only reason I'm asking is because our comprehensive plan is what now? 2 decades old?
Yep, I think it was
Well-
2005.
So,
Somebody
It's
wants,
getting there.
somebody wise once told me if it's not broke, don't fix it.
I was just asking, that's all.
But you read through this whole report, you're a better man than me.
I was bored. So,
Yeah, I see that the Galleria Mall is gonna be revitalized.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff they talk about potentially repurposing things as multifamily homes if they can get stuff, and just the drain on resources that it would create, and some other challenges, but also some improvements. So interesting plan.
Yeah, it is. We can get some tidbits there.
Yeah.
Okay, that takes us out of correspondence. There's no other correspondence for us, right?
No.
Okay, moves us into Andy's report.
The first part of my report, I was asked last month to just pull out the Northeastern York County Sewer Authority intergovernmental agreements and just, I guess, give a summary to the board of where those agreements stand. And when I pulled those out, the 2011 agreement expired in 2021. In 2021, or in 2020 through 2021, the board and the boroughs were discussing a new agreement or an extension of that agreement, but it was not adopted. So currently, there is not an intergovernmental municipal agreement for the sewer authority. The board would have to reinitiate those discussions. The authority is a municipal authority organized under the Municipality Authorities Act, so it can operate without that agreement. The main purpose of the agreement would be to put any caps on rates, or the prior agreement had, or the original agreement had set some surcharges on certain rate districts. The 2011 agreement had equalized those things. The 2011 agreement was, for the most part, performed. If there are things like that going forward, that's when you would need an intergovernmental agreement. Otherwise, the authority can continue to function under the Authorities Act? And does it need to have an intergovernmental agreement to operate? So I don't know if the board has any questions from there. Again, we were, reporting back information the board was looking for this meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Because I inquired, I knew I was involved in negotiations when we were doing the last agreement, MOU. And I don't think we need to rush into anything right now. So just to
Yeah,
inquire.
and the last agreement, a lot of that discussion was around the Area 2 expansion, which is underway now. So, was it necessary to get that agreement in place to do that work?
Just a clarification, Area 2 expansion, the project timeline is kind of on hold right now.
Okay. The next item on my agenda then is something that was tabled from last month, and that's the resolution for North Sherman Street for completion of or adoption of the drainage maintenance agreement for those road repairs. I'm not sure if the additional, I believe we were waiting on plans and some specific information to be filled in that agreement. Christie, if you have, I don't know if you have that information, if it's ready for adoption.
Yes, I do. I have it ready. All the information is filled in and the plan is here.
If everything is approved and signed tonight, when can we anticipate construction to begin?
I believe that was spring. They would start bidding in November. We have a deadline of Labor Day, and this is one piece to that puzzle to keep our process going to make their Labor Day deadline. They'll do their bidding in the fall, and then, yes, they'll start construction in the spring. This is a part of a bigger project that goes into Springettsbury. Is that correct, Shane?
Yeah, they're adding it to two other projects is what they're doing.
Yep.
So their deadline is Labor Day of 26,
No,
25.
25, yep.
All right,
With the works to start in spring of 26.
okay.
Mr. Naylor,
Yes.
makes sense?
Will those added projects delay us?
No, it's all for the bidding process, the way it sounds there.
Well, there will be a pre-con meeting on site. Please let me know when that is, because I'm gonna be there. I wanna make sure that what we discuss with the individual down there, the lady, gets done down through. Okay, so I make a motion that we approve, is it approved resolution, Andy? Approve resolution 2025-9. North Sherman Street extended.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. It's good that thing's getting rolling now. And yeah, it's kind of interesting they combined that. That's pretty cool. PennDOT to do that. But,
Well, they said if we miss this train, then they don't know when it'll get done. So that's why it's super important to stay on track.
well, the ink's going to be dry tonight, Christie.
And then I have these two for you. This is the actual agreement, which is what the resolution approved.
Okay, Andy, that takes us to zoning ordinance amendments.
Is the York County Planning Commission reviewed the last round of changes that were submitted to them, and we have the report back now. And their recommendation was to adopt the changes without any, or adopt the ordinance without any further changes. So they did recommend approval now. And I don't know, so the next step for the board would be, if you want to move those forward, the next step would be to authorize us to advertise for a public hearing on those amendments, and to schedule that public hearing.
And then, of course, planning commission, our planning commission also reviewed it again. And, the motion, I'll just read the motion, to add the exemption for a very small stand that is set up in the morning and removed in the evening, temporary shade allowed by canvas, with all produce being grown on site. And then another item to this is the roadside stand provisions to be at least 50% of the produce being grown on site or close proximity. And then on the fence ordinance, require a setback or a plan of maintenance without trespassing on the neighbor's property. So then just to start off with the first item, staff does recommend that exemption item that planning commission is recommending. And I mean, we'll see, it'll be trial and error to see how this works out. It's pretty, I don't wanna say vague, but it'll engulf a lot of things, but it'll be up to the zoning officer and codes enforcement officers' discretion when they see those kinds of things. And then going on, and I don't know if you wanna like have discussion after each bullet point, and then I move on to the next one. It's up to you. I can keep going. Okay. So the next one is the roadside stand provisions to be at least 50% of the produce being grown on site or close proximity. That's up to you guys. Currently, that was one big discussion you had at the last board meeting where we were talking about this. You guys went away with, putting, a distance on, this ordinance. If you would like to put this on, it's just gonna be hard to enforce. We don't know where they're bringing it unless they tell us. If someone reports it to us, we'd have to investigate it, and once again, I'm not sure how we would find out that evidence. But if it's on there, maybe it'll just prevent people from going crazy and, getting all their produce and making it a business kind of thing in their front yard. Go ahead, Tom. If you'd like. Sure, yes.
Am I on?
Yep.
Okay. On the roadside stands, we talked about this at the last planning commission meeting, but at the end, things kind of got a little busy, a little hectic. But you're saying about you can bring some of your produce in, like 50% you're proposing? From
That's
off-site.
what, planning commission said, the roadside stand provisions to be at least 50% of the produce being grown on site or in close proximity.
Okay, so then I brought up about, excuse me, firewood. Most people who sell firewood at their homes are cutting off someone else's lot. And I remember I brought this up at the meeting, and I think you said, well, that'll be okay. But I don't think it's gonna be okay unless it's written in the ordinance.
Do
That
you mean they're
firewood,
bringing it in from somewhere else?
sure.
If we can't prove it, then we can't enforce it. We can't, if that makes, I need hard evidence.
So then why put it in?
Right. I need hard evidence to enforce it. And
Well,
if
I don't-
if I don't have it, I can't.
That's my point, I don't want to enforce it. I mean, if
Okay.
Joe provides a roadside stand, he goes 2 miles to someone's wood lot, and he cuts the wood, he brings it back to his property. That's not really the 50% you're talking about, but if he's allowed to do that, you said that's okay, but shouldn't that be written in the ordinance? I mean, that it is, that you can bring wood in at more than 50%? It'd be 100%.
If they don't add this provision at all, then as it's written now, it would be fine.
Okay, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Do you have any comments or questions on that?
No.
Okay,
I do.
sure.
Who determines locally what the distance is? You're saying 50% of the produce, whatever it should be from the property, and then it can be up to 50% locally.
The way this recommendation is written, so it says or close proximity, it would be up to the discretion of the enforcing officer to determine that, and that
It's
would
too
be,
vague.
yeah.
It's, and frankly, I think it's too prescriptive.
right.
I think it's tough to enforce, because,
Yeah,
you know, you're not gonna know that, I mean, other than take Bob's example of someone cutting wood. Clearly, I don't have any trees I'm chopping off my property, there's some right behind me, but technically not mine.
Right.
But, that's certainly close proximity, but again, it's subjective. So today I feel like 50 feet is close proximity. Tomorrow it may be 500 feet. I think it's too vague, and someone reading it just isn't gonna have a sense of what we're enforcing.
But it gives us guideposts for us to stay within. They're wide guideposts. But in case we do have a situation where it's getting out of hand, we have some guidelines.
And that's fair, but the way I was reading this too was like the small stand where you take it down at the end of the day versus, you know, somebody that's got more business. The example in North Sherman Street at that farmhouse there. I'm sure they grow a lot of stuff locally, but I bet you there's a lot of stuff they bring in.
I actually
I
walked
guess.
all of everything that he grew, and it was extensive. It was just behind all the structures is all. Mhm.
It's just, you know, it was a
But
guess
right.
on my part, but again, had you not walked it, you wouldn't have been able to prove it.
Right,
You'd have to see a truck delivering something or something of that nature.
yeah.
I don't necessarily have a problem with guideposts, but it's like, when it's subjective, I can't read, and then I've got to call somebody and get their opinion on what's close proximity. The other challenge I have is, you know, really providing or finding that hard evidence. Clearly, someone that chops wood, they don't own the acreage to do it. That's pretty good evidence versus growing some produce or whatnot. That gets a little harder possibly. I don't know. Just my 2 cents.
Would you like me to keep moving?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so then the last one here is on the fence ordinance, require a setback or a plan of maintenance without trespassing on the neighbor's property. I understand the spirit of this, and we've heard some instances where this has become, you know, a difficult situation. For instance, like Troy Renzel's farm. I think Herb, next you also experienced this with Chestnut Valley a little. And I definitely understand where they're coming from. You know where I stand from the last meeting that we discussed this regarding the setback because of the created alleys. So professionally, I don't recommend that. When I try to think about the maintenance provision, that would also be difficult. We were coming up with different scenarios. A lot of times people are going to be trying to get around the ordinance, and we see that a lot. What are the loopholes, you know? And I can just see someone saying, oh, well, I'm proposing a 4-foot tall fence. I only want to be 1 inch from the property line because I can bend over my fence and spray it with weed killer, and that's my maintenance plan, you know? So that's just one example. Plus, this would be very civil. Trespassing is civil. We do not get involved in civil disputes. This is up to you guys. If you like one of these, staff doesn't actually recommend any of them and just keep the ordinance the way it is. We did add that gate provision where you're only allowed to have your gate open to the inside when it's abutting a neighboring property. And then also we added, per all of the discussion, that if you want to be on the property line, you have to have an agreement with your neighbor, and it gets recorded against the land. So that's where I stand with that. Up to you, completely up to you for discussion.
I have with H, the deer fence, 100 square feet is only 10 by 10. That's not a heck of a lot of ground. I have 3/4 of an acre. And before I built my garage, I had a large area there with the deer were jumping in there. 10 by 10 doesn't give you much for corn crops or tomatoes and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's really, I see you have it set up 100 square feet per acre, 25% of the area of the rear yard.
It's bracketed, so it's more a function of, do you want the lesser of or the greater of?
Yeah.
At least in your situation, certainly the greater of, 100 square
I'm
feet.
just, 10 by 10 is not much.
No,
They're
it's
not reading the right one. I apologize. Andy actually did change this. It looks like you don't have the most up-to-date.
Okay.
Let me see if I can
It's
find
1,000
that.
by 1,000.
No, hold on one second.
So that language, what was deleted out of the end of H, yeah, the percentage was deleted out of that. So the change in H was, it would read, notwithstanding subsection A, a fence designed to exclude deer may be erected in the rear yard. And this was added for the protection of a home garden in compliance with this subsection. And then the remainder of the section remained the same, except the last sentence was deleted. What was deleted was the maximum area enclosed by the deer fence shall not exceed, and there was a choice between 100 square feet or 25% of the area of the rear yard. So that language was deleted.
So there is no size limit based on the revision?
Right.
That's right, yes. There was no size limit. It was,
Just had to be in the rear yard?
yes, it's restricted to the rear yard, but there was no size limit. I think, if I recall that discussion, there was a lot of back and forth about, well, the garden may be different sizes. What this says, this limits it. Previously, it was not limited to the use. This now limits it to protection of a garden. So unless the garden takes up the entire rear yard, it's not gonna be that size. So I think the logic when we prepared the changes and when we discussed it the last time was, if you limit it to just protecting a garden, then you don't have to have other size limits on it rather than guess about what that garden size may be. Because if you have a 5-acre lot, you could potentially have a 1-acre garden if they're, if they're growing a substantial amount of things, and that wouldn't restrict them then, or require them to get a variance.
That makes sense to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the exclusion. And then there's that 50% thing, and then here's the fence thing, so.
Carrie, you could done gone through them.
Yes,
Okay, we cleared up the deer fence thing. So it boils down to, we need to clear up where we want our fences placed. I don't want to create alleys. We're going to create ourselves a problem if we mess with the fence ordinance. I think if I put a fence up at the edge of my lot, I have an agreement with my neighbor, this is the type of fence I'm putting up, you okay with that? And if he wants to trim along his side of the fence, so be it. I know not everybody gets along like that, but,
I think that situation would dictate if you don't get along with your neighbor, putting up a fence, then it's, kind of builder beware to some degree.
well, then if he did install a gate, and I'm okay with not allowing gates. Because if you open the gate, you're stepping into private property.
And it
But I
gets
would
some-
put a sign right there at that gate.
it says
Private
no
property,
trespass,
do
no
not,
trespass.
yeah. Well, and put razor wire on the top, but,
Or purple paint, that's,
yeah,
that's a new thing, purple
keep
paint.
the owners out.
Um, Yeah, I tend to agree, I think otherwise we're getting too prescriptive and creating situations that lead to other problems.
Well, I do hope that we continue this exercise throughout the years, because us going through our zoning and saldo ordinances and stuff like that is healthy. And I don't want to nitpick everything and go that you got to stay 2 inches off the property line, stuff like that. But with that, I'm going to make a motion that ordinance 2025-1, a motion to have that ordinance amendments, including the small farm stand exemption, advertised for hearing and consideration for approval for their next meeting.
I'll second that.
Discussion on that. So we okay with the changes and all that stuff, and we just gotta move on from this. I think we could kick this around for a couple more months, but, call for the vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
And just so I'm clear on that, you do want to make additional changes to it for the small stand exemption. Can you forward me the notes from the planning commission on that?
Yeah.
Kristen?
Yeah. I appreciate their input, and, I like that idea with the small stand,
Yeah.
because that's what we're all about here. And, I don't want to get away from that. So that moves us to another ordinance amendment, noise ordinance, Andy.
Yeah, and I circulated the first draft of that came back, and this is only, remember, this is only the amendment to the noise ordinance itself. We would also have to do amendments to the zoning ordinance, and then I think the intention would be to also add a requirement in the saldo that noise studies be done on certain types of projects. So I had this to circulate first. What I think would likely make sense to do, the zoning ordinance changes may be simple, and we didn't try to or ask for changes to that yet, because what we can likely do is in the zoning ordinance refer back to section 137-7 and the noise limits that are in that section as the performance standards that have to be met under the zoning ordinance. In other words, we don't have to have two different tables and sets of noise limits.
Yes.
So I think that works. In the saldo, I think the changes we would be making would be similar to the changes that were made recently to the saldo to add traffic study requirements for certain types of developments. I think you would, and maybe it's for industrial developments, or maybe it's at the determination of the township engineer that you would be able to require. And what I think you should be doing is requiring sound modeling up front on the project, and then also establishing baseline sound levels through a study, and then establishing post-operational sound levels through a study. And
Yeah,
we added,
So if I can interrupt, so I'm clear. Our intent was to have that sound studying done to get a baseline. prior to construction,
Yes,
and then post-occupancy.
yes,
And that way we can control.
yes. What I'm suggesting in addition to that, though, is to require them to do a sound model with their equipment and mitigation. That way you have a better chance of determining whether there's going to be a problem when it's constructed so that it can be mitigated before construction rather than trying to enforce something post-construction.
During the planning.
Exactly. And can we specify they use our engineer for that?
We can, or you could have them do the sound study and provide that your engineer can review it. That way you get two engineers potentially signing off on that.
But isn't that the
study.
same as having them do a traffic study, because numbers are numbers and they're paying for the bill, so.
Right,
Right. We interviewed our guy that we chose to do our sound modeling,
right.
and for the sake of consistency, I'd like all our industrial partners him to do that model for new
Right.
building, new construction.
Yeah, we could provide for that in there. Um, I
It's
mean,
all in the semantics when we write it
Yeah,
out.
I mean, I think what's likely going to happen is they're going to have their own engineer potentially review that as well. But that may not be the case. I mean, we can provide for that in there. You can look at doing that. I don't think that's not the typical way to do it. I mean, typically it's their burden to produce the study and then the municipality can review it and reject it. This is different than, I will say this is different than traffic studies in that you're going to be modeling equipment at a location. It's pretty easy for your end. If the township sound engineer does not like the software that they used or the modeling that they did or assumptions that they made, it's relatively easy to generate their own report if they feel that's necessary because they'll have the inputs, the specifications for the sound levels of different pieces of equipment and the locations of them. Unlike a traffic study, they don't have to go out there and do any actual testing or, they don't have to do
Right.
traffic
And it's about the
counts or-
future of traffic, about what will this new building development, whatever
Right.
bring, and it's more numbers fabrication, where this is more science-based.
Yes,
And the specifications that certain equipment puts out this many decibels or this type of environment.
yes, it should be more that way. What I will say is, when it comes to sound modeling, if equipment specifications aren't known at the time, and they may not be because you don't have your zoning or your subdivision land development doesn't regulate the actual equipment that goes in. And some equipment, the manufacturers don't produce sound specifications. Typically, in those cases, it is more like a traffic study in that they use industry assumptions for the noise levels. Those should be conservative. I think you'll probably get more accurate projections and a more accurate model than a traffic study, but it's not going to be perfect. The goal would be, though, to not allow a major sound problem or noise problem to be constructed that you then find out about and have to try to go back and mitigate after the fact.
That's what we're trying to prevent.
Right.
Because if say, for instance, the valley between the township and the borough back here along Manchester Street, that echoing, we can even specify, or sound engineer would say, okay, how far out do you want to measure the sound? because it could be 3,000 yards across the field and it's bouncing off those apartment buildings. And
Right.
that sort of thing. That's what I want to make sure that we have some data that we can use. So simplified for me is company XYZ is developing this plan, so they come up with a model.
Right.
We'd submit that to our guy and he looks at, that looks about right. So,
Yeah, if he's using, if they're using the same software, if they agree with the assumptions, then, you know, the output's probably the same product that you would have gotten otherwise. But he may come back and say that, you know, some of those assumptions, although in most of those models, I think the model can take into account buildings or obstructions, but I think in most of the models that I see run don't take into account any obstructions. The only thing they take into account is topography, and they assume that all sound sources are downwind of the source of the sound. So as though the source of the sound, wind is radiating out from it 360 degrees. So sound is carrying its maximum distance.
so sound also has a plume, and a flume.
Right,
Right.
so normally wind would only impact sound in one direction.
Okay.
But the model assumes that the wind direction is 360 degrees, so that it's as conservative as possible. So, you know, those are the kinds of assumptions that I think your sound engineer can look at and determine whether or not they're correct. And like I said, even probably run a separate model if they feel the model's not showing correct information.
So we'd require them to give us their inputs that they use in
Yeah.
their model.
Which in reality may even be easier for your engineer to do, because otherwise they have to gather all of that information and track down that information, which, you know, may or may not be easy to obtain.
But it can be a requirement that whoever does it, their engineer, the developer,
Right.
is required to provide all their input, details, documentation, basically. So our engineer could utilize his own model.
Right.
Worst case scenario type of deal.
Now, the other side of that is, and one of the other reasons you probably want them to do the initial study, thinking this through the whole way, is if there is mitigation required, you probably want them to be designing the mitigation so that rather than the township having ownership and responsibility for that mitigation. That way, if it doesn't work, you don't have a developer pointing at the township saying, well, that's what you told us to do, so we did it. You're relying on their engineer to design the mitigation. And if it doesn't work, their engineer has to go back and redesign it.
Right. It puts all the costs on their side, basically, and then we just have our engineer independently validate
Right.
their outputs.
And the responsibility, which is
The critical
liability, which is probably important as well.
Should we require a pre-app, like a pre-meeting prior to the test so they could review what equipment they're going, and make that a requirement? That our engineer is reviewing, hey, you know, they don't have to have it in place, but this is where, you know, this is the type of equipment we're going to be using, you know, that before they go out and do the test, and then our engineer reviews it and says, well, this software was not good enough, it's out of date or something like that.
Right, I think we need to check off boxes, so to speak, like what application you're using, and this is equipment you're using, so we're not comparing apples to pears.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And we can ask for suggestions regarding the software. The only the only hesitation I have with it, and I think it works, you have to be diligent about keeping that up to date. And that's, your noise standards currently are way out of date. That's, that software could get out of date much more quickly than the noise standards even. But we could say, an industry approved or an industry accepted. Yeah, or there may be software that's certified by the INCE, the Institute for Noise Control Engineers, something like that.
I like that better,
Ooh, yeah.
because that way.
They probably have T-shirts and stuff.
Well, and we would provide that the study has to be performed by an INCE certified engineer as well, board certified engineer.
So in the draft ordinance, is there anything we should comment this time, or is it more of just kind of
It's-
notes and getting back to him?
It's up to the board. I mean, some of the, just flipping through it quick, some of the important changes, I think, to bring to your attention. So the change in subsection A2 to go to measuring or creating a noise disturbance across a lot line or at 100 feet from such source, whichever is less, is, that is loosening the standard a little bit, but I think what we were asking from the noise engineer is, what is reasonable and more typical. And so, some of these changes were things where he pointed out either the standards, maybe too broad, or like in that case, that may be a little bit more reasonable. Some of the substantive changes, though, in subsection C and subsection D for operating equipment and loading and unloading, he did change the time from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Bless you.
I believe he did that because later in your noise standard tables, it was in the previous ordinance, and he carried this over, it was 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. So I think that change is just to keep the hours consistent. If you want those hours to be 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., we can probably make that change. We can just make that change everywhere.
Yeah, I think we do.
You want to keep it at 9?
Yeah.
I think that was, I mean, the other changes, I don't know if you all had any
Yeah,
comments on those.
I have a couple comments. If I
Sure.
may, Andy. So in section C, where it starts out operating or permitting the operation of any tools, I guess that's more just specific in that paragraph. Other types of noises are covered in the other, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then moving on down, there's section I, just has any electric powered, and I guess that's the same thing again. There are individual sections again, pointing out different things, but you got to take all the paragraphs together, right?
Right, yes.
Let's see. Of importance.
And I don't know, one thing to just point out in that section, that subsection I it's only saying electrically powered.
Right.
And you do have equipment in there, like lawn or garden tools, snow blower, leaf blower, that are used outdoors. Obviously nowadays there are electrical, the gas powered are typically louder. This wouldn't cover gas powered equipment.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that should just say I'm not sure that that should just say electrically powered.
Yeah.
I
kinda
think,
highlighted it,
I think you could just go with powered equipment,
Probably.
whether it's pneumatic or electric or.
Yeah, that just stood out to me when I was going through.
Okay.
So, again, it's one of those things where it's a laundry list of sections that go through and lists different types, so I was thinking, well, you gotta take them all kind of individually, but then park them under something, but, yeah, better to make them out. I think further on down, one of his edits gets into that table, I think one, asks a question about, we want to include public parks. I would think that we would. You wouldn't want a lot of sound coming into a public park, right?
And,
I was thinking like John Rudy Park has all that development around it. So,
and the other one that goes along with that is institutional, like schools.
okay.
So, and, and, and just so we're clear as well, these are the uses designated for the receiving, land.
Right. Yeah, I just think to me, if I'm in a park, I don't know that I'd want to hear loud sounds while you're trying to enjoy yourself. Certainly if I'm in school for the day, I'd like to concentrate rather than daydream.
And would it be, would it be just schools or would there be other types of public or institutional uses? I mean,
Good point.
How about if we would distribute this, we can make some marks on our copies.
okay,
Get it
yeah,
back
that's,
to Andy.
that would be fine, and that may be the most helpful, and then we can circulate all of that back. So,
We had a couple comments on the
Yep.
PDF, so I'll just clean up the other ones that are
okay.
not relevant and send them to you.
Yeah, and if everybody wants to get, and get staff comments back as well, we could compile all those comments and recirculate a draft with those in.
Sounds good.
That'll be fine. The last thing then on my agenda is the school zone. Oh, go ahead.
On 137.6, evidence of disturbance. I have a multi-part question here. That you can clarify. My issue's always been complaints from two different neighbors, two different lots. Most cases, I think the police could use disorderly conduct, some of those things, but in this situation, if we had a truck idling at a business and one person calls in and complains about it, nothing can be really done about it.
So it would depend on,
If you go back to 137-5, motor vehicles, it looks like our amended ordinance is showing in here from the end of 2024, where we were addressing the idling of vehicles for longer than 15 minutes. And then it's within 150 feet of any residence. And it looks like we have maybe a good tool in our pocket to address that. Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm not specifically saying trucks idling, but like,
Oh,
we've had a business and we've had a lot of issues with noise and everything. That type of situation, if only one person calls in and complains about the noise,
yeah.
we can't do anything about it. Or does the ordinance then allow us to contact our engineering people to go up and set up some sound equipment? And
yeah, so there are sound limits. There are sound limits there for those things in this, and he did try to simplify them from what you had previously, but you have daytime and nighttime limits for sound hourly equivalent, but then you also have maximum single moment sound levels of 63 decibels from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. So part of the inquiry would have to be whether or not they violate any of these sound limits. And what we can ask him, and if you want to include this in your review of it, and I'll make a note of it as well, but what we would want to ask him specifically is, are the sound limits in 137-7 capturing noises like truck idling? So, and just get his opinion on that. If one of our concerns are trucks idling, are these limits low enough that they're going to capture and it's not, you know, that type of a sound is not going to be an issue?
Yeah, Mike, this stems from years ago. We had, the place had seafood, business right inside the residential area. And they would drive their tow motors up over the metal plates to load and unload trucks. So the metal plates and the tow motors are what cause all the noises rattling all night long as they're loading and unloading. So, you know, if someone, just one person calls in about it all the time, or maybe every third night they call in about it and complain, we don't have a violation. Or is that an instant where we call the engineer and say, go set up some sound, see if they're breaking?
Yeah, I mean, you may in that, well, I mean, you can try to enforce it and see if you're successful, but if you have problems, I think the sound limits are the backstop, and it would have to be, that sound would have to be measured. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know that there's, and I don't know that there's any way to fix that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, it's, I guess maybe you could compare it to speeding. You know, if you have 3 people say that car was going over the speed limit because it looked like it was going fast, is that enforceable compared to having radar reading of the car's speed? You know, it's, I mean, I think that's the nature of enforcement, and
Okay.
you know, you may have to do the same.
Sorry, we'll move on now.
So the last thing in my report then was just was the school zone speed limit ordinance, and that was distributed to you based on the traffic study that Shane had prepared, or that Shane forwarded to me, and that's ready to be advertised. We would just need a motion from you to authorize us to advertise it, and then we can get that advertised for next month's meeting.
Just have one question on, in the application of PennDOT, it had time restrictions in it, but the ordinance doesn't. Is that supposed to be that way? So the application said between X and Y hours, you know, was the school speed limit, but the ordinance doesn't state that. So it's just a question, does the ordinance need that?
I thought it did.
And I missed it. Because I was in section 1.
I think it was 7:30 to,
It's in the
it's only a specific small amount of time.
No, I understand, it's in the application, I didn't see it in the ordinance.
No, I don't see it in the ordinance, you're right. It was in the app.
Yeah, okay.
Does it need to be in the ordinance?
That's really the question. If it doesn't, then so be it.
So Shane, I guess the question is, how will the signage work for those speed limits? As far as,
They are posted with time.
okay,
For the
it's,
school speed limit, yes.
okay, so the signage is already posted with the times?
Correct.
Okay, then it should be in the ordinance, I think.
Yeah.
So we
So
can make that
7 to
change.
7:30 and 2:30 to 3. Yeah, I see it on the app. So we're gonna make that change?
Okay.
Yes, we can put those time limits in, and then And if it's okay with you, you can still authorize us to advertise it with that change.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
I
that-
have one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I make a change? Andy, on the second page, it states 300 feet north of intersection of High Street and Meeting House Road.
Right.
High Street changes to Board Road at East Parkview Road. So it's Board Road at Meeting House, not High Street.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I was looking at that on the map and trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay. So it should be intersection of Board Street and Meeting House.
Correct.
Meeting House Road, yeah.
Board Road, not Board Street.
And Board
That's right.
Road, yeah.
Okay, so then I'll make a motion that we move to advertise for adoption of the ordinance of East Manchester Township, York County, Pennsylvania, establishing speed limits for school zone on certain township roads, and those roads are listed in here. We're going to add the restriction time to the ordinance, and the Board Road to Meeting House is the distance, the area affected.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
That's it for my report, unless there are any questions about any of the additional items that were in the report. Those are all the agenda items.
Okay, any questions for Attorney Miller?
None.
Okay. That's gonna take us down to Byron.
Okay, first one is Willow Springs cul-de-sac. I owe Shane some stakeout information, but we're also, at Shane's request, trying to define where the limits of the property are. And of course, we sent our surveyors out there and we found no property corners anywhere in the area. So my guy's working on it. He found some on adjoining properties up the street a little bit, and we're trying to piece all that together, make sure we keep within our grading, stays within the limits of the property. So we're moving forward with that. Espresso Way improvements you have. I gave you a larger scale plan tonight. The top sheet is what I call like sketch one. And sketch one basically widens the curb line for the most part from where it is back to where the sidewalk is. It gets rid of the grass strip. And that's what I'm trying to do, try to protect or maintain as much of the sidewalk that's there that we don't have to replace. But we all have to replace some sidewalk nearer the intersection. This does provide us with adequate lane widths that PennDOT wanted to see. If you're okay with this general layout, originally we talked about possibly doing all the improvements on one side to limit what we have. The problem there is that if we do that, the driveway across the street into Kinsley's industrial area does not adequately line up, and PennDOT would make us improve all of that.
Repeat that, Byron. So that rules out concept two?
So concept, let's stay, concept one
Yeah.
is just the widening on our side. So it
Yes.
basically moves the curb line from where it is to where the sidewalk is. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. And that gives us enough stacking distance for the turning lane. It would stay, everything would go, if we do the widening on both sides, we don't have to touch anything across the street.
Okay, so this would require us widening on both sides?
Widening on both sides of Espresso.
Yes.
Okay.
So then we could utilize concept two, because concept two has the same laneage.
Concept
Sizes.
two, which is the second sheet?
Yes.
Okay, so concept two is worst case scenario that if I sit down with PennDOT and they do not like concept one and they tell me I have to do improvements across the street to to line everything up perfectly. So we just did that sketch just as like a backup plan, and that has limited amount of work, but concept one is what we're asking for.
Okay.
What we want to ask for, it meets all their requirements. It provides a safe intersection, it provides the turning lane that we want, and again, it provides the required stacking distance, everything that we want. Concept two is, again, is worst case scenario, PennDOT comes back and says, we don't like that, that's off by a foot and this over here on this side, we want you to realign this to match. Then we go that route.
Okay, so it's safe to say that we could adopt concept one and do the other side, which is outlined in concept two at a later date?
That's possible, we'd have to, when I'd like to be submitting this PennDOT permit here in the next week or two.
So are we absorbing any of this cost?
I guess my understanding was that the other developer was paying for all this.
That's my understanding. So with that, if that is in fact true, why don't we go for the full money? Instead of just,
Yeah, but do we have a cap on how much they're,
Yes.
was it what, 500,000?
I don't remember what that number
It's-
is right now.
I can,
I have it
I
too.
can pull it up.
So would you be prepared tonight to give us a cost figure on A or one and two? Guess.
No, a guesstimate? Based on what I've been seeing on prices, we're not doing any of this work ourselves, this will all be bid out, correct?
Yes.
So if we're paying prevailing wage rate, you're easy for just concept one, I'd say you're in the $300,000, $250,000 to $300,000 range.
So you would double that figure for
Not
concept?
quite, about 125 for the other side, it's not as bad. They don't have sidewalks over there, they don't have other issues over that side.
I thought that we were having the developer do this work at the time of.
And I think we are too, but he's asking for me for a price, and I'm trying to,
Eyeball it.
worst case scenario, I'm trying to give you a
Yeah.
price based on
So then
prevailing
we're
wage
gonna
rate.
Hanover Company.
Yeah,
Yes.
Hanover
So
Company.
Hanover Company to do both sides of the intersection would be up around 600,000 to round it up.
Yeah, their cap is 500,000.
It would be close, if they're not paying, I'm doing prevailing wage rates here, so if they're not doing prevailing wage rates, they're gonna be down in that 450, 500,000.
So that's my point. What they're doing is when they're gonna be working up on top of Locust Point, they're gonna come down and do this too. So they're not gonna be paying prevailing wage.
I'm assuming so, yes,
So then we could get the intersection improved to
concept two.
concept two to our liking. I'd like it better. I would agree with PennDOT.
Yes, this is all something I have to run by PennDOT, and that would be my next step. If you're okay with concept one and concept two, I can present that.
Gentlemen, just to get us talking here, I'm okay if we have to settle on concept one, no problem. But if we can get Hanover Company to do concept two, which incorporates a turning lane and everything
They
else.
both have turning lanes, I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah, they both have turning lanes.
I have two up right now, concept two.
yeah, so that would provide a turning lane for them.
The difference is, correct me if I'm wrong, is that concept two requires a realignment across the street.
Correct.
Because you're making it wider on
Correct.
the express.
Exactly.
Which wider
That's not
also makes
this
it safer.
Right here.
Sometimes,
What's up
yes.
there?
Sometimes, yes.
That's two.
So
I have concept one and two, but right now two is
the
in
way I
Well,
summarize
I'm
it,
looking at concept two right here and it has.
One thing with like on the other side of the road, like on our side, we're going back about 150 feet to provide the turning lane coming out Espresso, which gets us back to almost their driveway, going back into Hollies. The other side is not as much improvements. It's a shorter distance, but the radiuses would change a little bit.
But see what I'm looking at here, I'm looking at something different than what's here.
but concept two widens the street, it widens the turning radius, and therefore they have to realign across the intersection with what's
Yeah.
parked here.
And, and for us in the future, I'd rather do it now when somebody else is paying the tab.
So I would venture to say that if we presented concept to the PennDOT, we wouldn't have any issues.
Well, and again, for me, my question, the Byron answered, it is wider. Wider tends to provide a little bit more safety factor there. Especially given the comment made about.
You're talking a foot here and there is what you're talking
Yeah,
about, but it does improve it.
But I mean, take Locust Point, the comment we had earlier today, right?
Right.
Even those radiuses there and not approved, yeah, you the stories, and I know I've seen it. The difference is, I don't care about my truck, and if they hit it, well, me get a new truck.
So again, this is just for your discussion tonight, and again, my next step was to set up a pre-app meeting with PennDOT, discuss it with them, and then get ready to submit.
All right, so you're gonna bring this back to us in May?
Yes, and if you're okay with me going to meet with PennDOT.
I am.
That's all I needed for tonight.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should this be submitted to Hanover at all?
We were in charge of the design and permitting.
Okay, so then, all right.
And just to ask Christie, do we have the signed agreement from Hanover Company?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And is there any update on where they are with their project?
I do not know that.
Okay, because the last time we checked, they still didn't, they weren't,
They didn't have their big permits yet.
that's right, they were still waiting on DEP permits
Right.
for either stream crossing or some wetlands that were expected to take some time, so.
Right, and they're required to give us notice prior to beginning any kind of groundwork, I believe, on their site. And at that time is when they're supposed to, pony up the money.
You're worried about the logistics, Andy?
Well, just so that the board's aware as you move forward, and I'm not suggesting to slow down on the permitting, but it's not a done deal that they still have to get permits and things before they begin any construction, so there's not really a schedule or a timeline yet. And you have, from the date I think they give you notice, you have, I think, a year to get the permitting done.
Oh, I believe so, yes.
Yeah, when did that year already start?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, I thought-
That year hasn't even started yet.
So we're not at risk or anything.
Okay, I thought my
No,
year
it's-
started here, and I'm trying to keep things moving here.
As long as, the only thing that you would be at risk for is how long is the HOP good for if you get it?
Initially 2 years, but 2 years, and then you can extend it, you can keep extending it.
As long as, if you're early in the schedule, as long as your permit doesn't expire, but it sounds like you're fine.
Does that cost money to extend?
No, because we're a municipality, it's free anyway.
Oh, good.
So PennDOT has just been sending me emails here in the last 2 months that they have a new program about extending permits and stuff like that. So anything that they haven't said that we're gonna stop it, extending them after a certain point. As long as you respond in a timely manner on their email, then we'll be good as far as keeping extended. But typically, the first permit's good for 2, and then you can keep extending it.
Okay.
Okay?
I just want to make a point. I don't want to get my soapbox about trucks, but you cannot make these intersections wide enough. That's like building a pole building. Once you get all your stuff in, you say, man, I wish I had to build it bigger. But they need all the room they can get to make
Okay.
those corners.
I have 2 items that wasn't on my agenda. One is, I just let Shane know, I think yesterday, the multimodal grant, and I think I sent it to Christie too.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so and I don't know if that's on her agenda, but the multimodal grant is for like highway improvements, street improvements, et cetera. It is due July 31st. Okay, so I don't know if, I mentioned it to Shane, if he had any projects, maybe, not for 2025, but maybe for 2026, that we can apply for the grant. So, that's up to you whether the board wants to go, but we can't wait around until July. Even the first week in July, I'd like to be working on this in May and June, and have it ready to go, that I don't need to be running around getting resolutions and everything like that at the last minute.
Did it cost anything, Byron?
No, this one didn't, I don't believe. So I actually I went through this last summer when one of my boroughs, we did almost a mile of street. And the process, once you get the grant in, wasn't so bad. It was the resolutions and what they wanted after they gave you the grant took about a month or two. And going through the process with some resolutions and some paperwork, once all that was signed and approved, they're very quick on paying. It went very smooth. So,
I'd like to put Willow Springs on that, Mr. Chairman. If it's something we could get for paving.
Yes.
That was my that was my 26 project. So, if we could get that, I think it'd be great, as long as it ain't costing too much or overtime or anything, so.
I think we can pretty much take plans that we have and put them together. I mean, I don't have to do a final plan with the submittal. It's more of a cost estimate.
Right.
And things like that. So, I mean, we can work up a quick cost, use, LiDAR and create what little plan I need to do and come up with a cost estimate.
I have estimates on the road already, Byron.
So, start there.
Yeah, might help you.
I suggest bumping them up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they'll that, but yeah.
And then the other one, just a quick update too, is we kind of hit it on a little bit, the Sherman Street HOP. So, we talked about that earlier, and if you happen to drive down Sherman Street right now, you'll see some PA one call paintings and stuff like, that were just refreshed. I'm trying to work through what PennDOT asked for yesterday was a phase B analysis of the one call. You have to start with the C. Then they tell you if the B is warranted, and then the A is the SUE, what we talked about before about the subsurface. So once I get this approved, then that PennDOT can tell me if I have to go to the C at the subsurface. So everything got remarked today, just to make sure we didn't miss any of the gas services, et cetera. So that's where we're at with that one.
So does that conclude your report, Byron?
Yes, it does.
Any questions for Byron?
No.
Moving on to manager's report. Takes us down to Northeastern York County Sewer Authority minutes. I reviewed the minutes and I've seen in the minutes where there was an inquiry about development in our area up near Saginaw, Starview area, and it's prohibited because of the EDU restriction, because of the Sewer Authority's restriction, the DEP or EPA, I forget which. I would like to suggest that the board allow Attorney Miller to contact Attorney Ruth of the Sewer Authority and inquire on, we have identified the source of the water that is DEP is concerned about. Why isn't there any action? I mean, like Mr. Albright stated earlier, was that the Sewer Authority forces somebody to come in your house and look at your floor drain and pour cement down there and cap it off, but then there's an entity that can dump stormwater into the sewer and get away with it for years. So it's restricting growth in the township.
And I can make that phone call. Is that, just to confirm, did you say that's Starview Mobile Home Park?
Yes.
Starview Countryside
They have their own
Communities.
plan,
Yeah.
which apparently is outdated. Way outdated.
So I just think that we need to get somebody moving on that down there. Okay, and then that takes us to any other comments on that?
No.
And then I'll go to Kate's report.
Anyways, I just want to announce that we are having a planning commission meeting on April the 22nd for Orchard Business Park, Phase 2, Lot 2. For the final plan. And then, no additional waivers are requested. And then,
If I may, in Orchard Business Park, Lehman still has some concerns over that plan, am I right? Sitting in staff meeting? Or are they been remedied?
His comment is outstanding for the exit, 26 ordeal because because of the studies and it's always been a comment. And due to a motion that you made last month, I guess it's, what he's saying is, here's my comment, it's up to the boards to figure that one out. That's what I took from it. That's a board level decision.
Lehman said it.
He didn't say it like that, but I felt like that's what he was saying.
he said it was going on in the comments.
Yeah, he said it'll be on the letter.
It'll be interesting to read planning commission's take on it, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, April 24th is the zoning hearing board. The first one I go to since I started. This one's gonna be for case 25001Z. It's for 145 Coventry Cross Road. This one came up when we were doing sidewalk snow removal inspections. I noticed that the truck had driven over the sidewalk, so it was pretty obvious that, it was snowing, so we seen the tire marks.
They weren't utilizing the driveway.
Yeah.
As a driveway. They created a second driveway.
Well, can I ask why this on the zoning hearing? Why is that just an infraction and we,
So when I
Fine
seen that the
report.
truck was over the sidewalk, using that as a second driveway, there was a shed in the front yard. So when I came back, I seen there was no permits pulled for the shed, plus it was in the front yard. And accessory structures are not allowed in the front yard.
but am I right in thinking that zoning hearing board is there to consider relief, but this is a violation?
Right, but he is going for 3 different reliefs. One would be to exceed maximum lot coverage because of the things that he had, the parking pad and the shed both exceed the maximum lot coverage on that property. And also for the accessory structure being within the front yard. I think it's only set in the front yard about 4 feet, if I remember right, in the front yard. And then it's also 2 feet into the side setback. So he's going for all 3 of those variances.
Yeah, but going for a variance is after the fact of the violation, so.
I'll expand on this. So pretty much in a nutshell, after she sent the cease and desist, they reacted pretty quickly to try to make it right, put in the permit. After review, she found that there was more issues, which is what she just outlined, the lot coverage, it exceeds by a de minimis amount, it's not very much. And then the setback ordeal. After talking to the family, and they even printed out some evidence to show maps from the past, but the stone parking pad that was there when his father or his parents owned the property. And, this is all hearsay at this point, but apparently that gentleman or his parents were told they didn't need a permit for a stone pad. So that's why they installed it. Now, if you go off with the stone pad alone, that's not technically a violation unless you do the lot coverage, right? It's over the lot coverage by a little bit. And when he took over the property and bought it, and this is what I've gathered through conversation, so he's gonna make testimony on all of this, and so I don't want you to put this is not record material here. But what I got from that conversation was that they put the shed down many years ago now. And
Stop it. We have a zoning hearing board member present, so I
Yeah.
don't think we should go into any more. I'm just saying that this is after the fact of a violation. ignorance of the law is no excuse of the violation. And I don't want to inundate zoning hearing with considered relief to these people if it's not their purview to do that.
Well,
I
they
just-
have a pretty good case. Their case is regarding the lay of the land and how it's sloped. It's over in Asbury. And, so, is that the answer you're looking for here? They have a hard case, they have a case that they're gonna present, in regards to a hardship, that they will present.
Okay, and I don't want to belabor the point, but do they realize that should have been discussed and debated on a permit process and not after the shed's been put up there? The thing is, so, okay, you understand my confusion and all this. No disrespect to zoning hearing, but I just don't want zoning hearing, having to do something that it's not within their purview.
Can I comment?
Sure.
I just started reading the application. And honest to gosh, the way I read it, Christie, is this has been intact for years.
Right.
The pad's been down for years. My guess is, before Christie was here, the shed, and it was there when they moved in. I always say, yes, you're gonna move on property and find out what the heck's going on with property and ask questions. Well, people don't do that, we know that. And that shed has been there, they didn't place the shed. It has been there for, I'm gonna say 7 years, maybe, I forget what those.
That sounds about right.
And they lived there for 5?
I don't remember that.
I don't remember how long they lived there. But I mean, that's the impression I got, unless they're gonna give other testimony. That's what I read, that's what anybody can read.
Yeah,
They go in your office and look at the application.
that's right.
So it's almost like, why the heck are we even here? Honest to God.
Yeah, and if we do establish there is a statute of limitations, then so be it, and it's up to staff to ascertain that. I'm sorry,
Well, we can, ask Attorney Miller, is there some kind of limit on, if someone installs structures, and then many years go by and they finally get caught, for not obtaining a permit for the structures?
So there's, there are certainly estoppel arguments, and there is a concept of variance by estoppel where if they've invested money and resources in reliance on that being allowed, and then later you try to enforce it or force them to get relief or remove something, they can be entitled to that. They have to have relied innocently and to their detriment in doing it. So generally, if someone just puts something in without a permit, that's a hard argument to make. It applies more typically where, they may have pulled an erroneous permit, or, the municipality may have made a mistake issuing the permit, and then comes back later and tries to enforce it. So, they probably can assert a defense to that. Whether or not that'll be successful, tends to be pretty factually specific in how innocent they were in doing it. And also how much knowledge and for how long did the township know and not take any action.
and go ahead.
Looking at this, I think like the grant is grandfathered in for years, it's been that way. Why put the people through it, refund the zoning hearing money, and let them put the structure back up on the pad?
Oh, it's there, it is
Okay,
there.
it's already there, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with it.
I think staff has the liberty and the latitude to use common sense, and if it's not hurting the neighbors or nobody's complaining or anything, then we err on the side of the residents.
Be cautious.
So just to be clear, am I hearing that you're giving us some kind of,
No, I didn't say that.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I mean, the ordinance are the ordinance, right?
But that was my initial reaction here. It was, Kate had a sharp eye and seen this and say, whoa, that doesn't look right. And it snowballed to this point where we're talking about it now. But like I said earlier, a violation is a violation. And if we feel it's grandfathered in, and I see the point now why it's going to go to the zoning hearing for them determination.
Right.
Okay.
It's a story behind it. And then not only that, they do have an odd lay of land. They really do.
Well, it's a unique
It is
situation
a
to that
unique-
particular land, and it's certainly one of the things that allows a waiver for a situation.
Right,
So that's why it's going to zoning hearing to
Right.
consider those.
A hardship.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Took a long time for me to get it.
that's okay.
That's all I have unless you have questions on any of my report.
I see our permits are coming back up to normal.
Yeah, they're starting to increase.
Yeah. And Lauren is busy.
Yeah, yep. Soon mowing season.
Soon getting up.
Yeah. Okay.
And right now, she's enforcing trees on commercial industrial properties. Because it's in the season.
Any questions for Kate?
Nope.
No,
Thank you, Kate. Nothing on the recreation board. Public Works Department, Shane.
Just my report, gentlemen. Any questions?
No, sir, thanks for the extraneous stuff you're doing and your daily routine for the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation's roads. Appreciate that.
I
Yep.
do have a comment. Thank you for the street sweepers going up and down our road like 3 times.
Well, that's a good thing.
Well, because it definitely seemed to be problematic, because that was still
The old one.
the old sweep, right?
And it was pretty heavy on your road too.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you need.
Oh, yeah, no,
But that being said, anybody who lives in developments or knows people in developments, we're getting to them now. Please ask them, get their cars off the roads.
I think the thing for me
So,
was, the analysis that we did for the new sweeper. I would say after watching what occurred, we underestimated the hours that sweeper was used.
yeah, I'd have to think about when we started, and we just finished our main roads now, so, and we still have all the developments to do yet, so.
I mean, just
Yeah.
watching what they did,
Mhm.
I just was like, he was moving a lot slower.
It's a slow process, yeah. That's all I have then, gentlemen.
Speaking of sweeping streets, I heard you mention the other day when I was over that Mount Wolf's gonna get done.
I would assume, we haven't talked to Keith, from Mount Woodbury yet, but I would assume we always do it every year.
So we do charge them, time and labor, or, labor and parts and everything.
Yeah, I have, I raise it a little bit every year, and I got that off of, like, one of the leasing prices that you guys saw for the other machine.
Yeah.
It was a couple years ago. I mean, I do increase it every once in a while, but yes, that's what it goes off of. Plus the gentleman's time driving the machine, so.
Yeah, and Manchester does not employ our.
No, Manchester Township does Manchester Borough.
Okay.
Yeah, we do Mount Wolf Borough.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No subdivision land development plans. Supervisor comments, Dean.
So I'll talk about the budget since we've got 3 months into the new year under our belt. We're at 25% of our revenue, so right on target, just a little bit above that. As a reminder, we budgeted 4.1 million in revenues, and we're north of $1 million, getting close to 1.1 million, hence 25%. So that all looks good for the stuff that's reoccurring, earned income, the real estate taxes and things of that nature. We had one small little bluebird hit that wasn't certainly nice, but wasn't the $500,000, $700,000 that we experienced last year. And from an expense standpoint, we're 30% of expenses. A big piece of that is if you back out the street sweeper cost, then we're down under 25%. So notwithstanding what's happening in the marketplace in general, and things that may increase costs going, I'd say, first quarter, so far, so good. Looks like we're on target to, stay where we are. The big thing coming up is when we get through half the year, we talked about what are we going to do? We're gonna look at our cash reserves and determine, do we pay off the loan early, or do we hold out for a little bit longer?
You want to do that at the half-year mark? I was going to ask you a question. Do you feel that we need a quarterly financial meeting at the end of the first quarter so that we can discuss whether, heaven forbid, if we'd have to raise taxes or entertain a fire tax for
I think
20?
to me, I think it would be helpful, having it in a public meeting, so those that want to attend can and can ask questions if they want to know more about what's going on. It can't hurt.
If we do have that meeting, I certainly do want it advertised and people can come in, but I probably, that would be a daytime meeting so that we can have our accountant
Yeah, we
run us
definitely
through
need
everything.
our staff here for that, because they'll know more of the inner workings behind the scenes. I'm looking at summary information. So far so good based on my knowledge of what I've seen.
Because I'd want to look projected out to what we have throughout the rest of 25 and then 26. So I'll make that happen. We'll advertise it.
Yeah, we're already through, so we could have one, I don't know if we can have one still this month or next month. Then we could schedule them every, quarter after.
Okay.
Because that way, by the time we get to the budget standpoint, two things happen when you think about it. You get into that, like, say we're in our second quarter, you have July possible thing. Be really in a good position, half the year's up. We could start looking forward to prepare the 2026 budget and get a better sense of where we are. So when we get to that fourth quarter, it's probably a shorter meeting for those folks that attended through it.
I think it's a healthy exercise to do this throughout the year so we know exactly, have our thumb on the
I agree.
scale.
That's the only comments I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Darryl?
Well, you asked me to check in what tariffs we can impose. I couldn't find any. I have no other comments.
Street sweeping, you could do a street sweeping tariff.
Oh, Darryl. Okay, the only, I have a few comments. Case in point with our going through the nuances and the boring nuances of discussing fence, where we put our fences and what we do with our saldo and our zoning ordinances. It's a pure demonstration by this township that there's a deep desire for us not to repeat the same mistakes we repeated on other development projects. We don't want to make that same mistake. And that's why we go through and nitpick our ordinances and stuff. And a case in point is, we gotta stay up with the times. We got to, we're discussing data centers now. If a data center would want to come into our township, where would it go? Data center is a building that requires a lot of cooling, a lot of water, and generates a lot of noise and a lot of heat. So they're the thing of the future, and we got to be prepared for that. So we have our attorney working on that. He provided a white paper for us to look at data centers, and it was very informative. So we want to stay ahead of the developers coming in here and demanding space and land and stuff. So, reminder that police meeting Thursday nights up here at Ford Road, and that's all I have. Any other comments from anyone in the audience? Andy, we do need executive for personnel continued, handbook and stuff.
Okay.
If you'd like to
We
do
do,
that now.
Ms. Manager?
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
So then,
And I-
do we recess or adjourn?
I would adjourn it so that if there's a motion to make any or prepare any changes to the handbook, you can do that on the record. when you
Okay.
come back.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn to executive.
Well, I'll make a motion, we pay all bills.
Oh, yeah, we gotta do that, don't we?
It's helpful.
Uh-huh.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion second before, all in favor?
Aye.
Now I'll make a motion that we adjourn to executive session.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.